tactically, what we do to try to make that more effective coaching conversation is thing one is you're going to state the common ground. Step two, which is state the facts. What I like to do after I've stated the facts, that's not like emotions. You're getting into the clear standards that have been violated in whatever the position or role is.
We have quarterly client surveys, which our trainers are graded on 9 different categories from our clients. Now, if there's some things that they're below the standard on, we'll address those specific things. It will be a 90-day performance improvement plan because we'll get the next scores out the next quarter.
After we have the red flag has been waved, this we're under standard, just getting emotional. First level, and he's just obviously a sit down, hit a reset button. It's a redefinition of our expectations, our standards, and if things aren't changed by X time, then things don't improve. This one will be documented for sure.
Beautiful people, last week we talked about what to do when good team members go bad. There was a ton of really good foundational stuff that frankly, I think should proceed. Like if this is the first episode you're listening to, please do yourself a favor and go back and listen to last week's episode because that has a lot of the foundational like prerequisites for being able to have any of the conversations that we're going to talk about today. And so last week was very much on sort of being able to set standards and the prereqs that you need to have in order to have tough conversations when a good team member goes bad. Today, I want to get tactical on what you guys do when you have somebody who is not meeting your standard. So we've set the standard. We know now that, hey, like sometimes you're going to have these tough conversations. Just brace yourself for it. It's part of being an entrepreneur, part of being a gym owner. Now we're in a state where you have clear standards. Someone has started to show that they are not meeting them completely. What happens next?
So after we have the red flag has been waved, right? Hey, we're under standard. Missed the mark. Something has to happen. Something's been triggered. All right, what does it trigger? Other than you just getting emotional and frustrated, what actually has to happen to like be a big boy, run the business, help the team? First level, and he's just obviously a sit down, like GR says, hit a reset button, but really it's just not only a reset button, but it's a redefinition of our expectations, our standards, and then also a collection of this is what's been happening. This is what we need to have happen. Here's a disconnect. Let's to have a discussion. And if things aren't changed by X time, then this is what's going to happen. Say things don't improve, then I would probably have another discussion. This one will be documented for sure. So the first one's more of a verbal warning. Second one's more like a written, hey, this is just, we met, we talked about it. Next time is going to be an improvement plan. Say it happens again. So we meet again. This is when in our company, we'd bring in more of not only the supervisor, but an HR representative. And they have a documented 30-day improvement plan, very detailed process. What happens if we are unsuccessful within this 30 days, or if we are successful within the 30 days. And then after that 30-day period, we kind of go from there. Usually solves most issues. Whether the person stays with us or not, it does solve everything that we need in that process. So that's pretty the low-hanging fruit, other than something being so extreme where you have to have a conversation and part ways. But that's pretty much the trigger after something in a few words. That's pretty much what has to happen when something's not being met.
So how harsh are you being? Because what I'm hearing is that first, I don't want to say the first necessary slip up, but maybe it is, right, for you guys. But basically, the first conversation is more of an informal, hey, this is where we're at. We're missing the standard somewhere. Is that clear? Or is that correct? Sorry.
Yeah, it's more just like, hey, I noticed this. Can you tell me more about that? Hey, I noticed this. All right, thanks for the explanation, because I was worried it was going to be this, or hey, we got to fix this, right? Like, let's get aligned with that. Make sure we're good to go. And yeah, it's more of that, just more of I would say a coaching conversation. If it's more of a routine type of thing, if this is more of a behavior or an attitude thing that is maybe it's a little more extreme, then you yourself need to kind of bring that. Is it a zero tolerance thing? That's a different coaching conversation for sure, with different level of intensity. If it's more of a structural system thing, something just not getting done, or even a metric thing, we're just not hitting the mark, then you can take the appropriate level of intensity to that. And it's, again, like I said, be a coach and figure out what the best course of action is.
Connor, what do you do differently?
I think that's pretty clear cut and dry. Like we do very similar. So we have different checkpoints. Like I was saying, we have quarterly client surveys, which our trainers are graded on 9 different categories from our clients. It's as simple things as, um, you know what? Let me pause for a second. Um, so it's as simple things as, is my trainer prepared for each session? Does my trainer fix my form and give me exercise solutions? Do they have a positive attitude and energy, high energy? Like, so we have 9 different categories. They're graded out on that. We look at that, and go over that with our trainers every single quarterly meeting that we have with them. Now, if there's some things that they're below the standard on, we'll address those specific things. If they're way below the standard on everything, then we'll put them on a performance improvement plan and we'll have different check-ins. So it will be a 90-day performance improvement plan because we'll get the next scores out the next quarter, but there's going to be different checkpoints that are going to be shorter that our director of training will have with them. It will automatically, if they're way below the standard, it's going to automatically trigger our director of training to get in and observe their sessions to give more formal assessments throughout the month. But again, it really depends on the severity. If it's something egregious, it's obviously going to be addressed with a firmer hand.
Yep.
Hey, dude, I am really not
The
great
old
at
sayings aren't clicking today.
yeah, the old sayings. It will be addressed way firmer. But if it's something that is, we just have a trainer and they're below the bar and some of the things, ultimately, like we hired that person, like it, especially in the model that I have, where it's 2 people, 2 staff members per location, to yank that person out and to find a replacement and rehire like that, that is really difficult, not difficult, but it's timely.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for us to do. So it's in our best interest to coach that person up and to get them above the standard. So what we're going to do is put a plan in place that we can address those specific things and get them above standard.
Yeah. I like it. Our process is really relatively parallel, even though it's in a very different industry at this point, right? Like we're just speaking to the marketing agency coaching side of what we do. And so there are absolutely, like if you haven't picked up on it, there are absolutely things that, yeah, if you do this, you're getting fired fucking immediately. Like there's not a coaching
Yeah.
conversation. It's just you're gone. And outside of those things, then it's, okay, do we have a clear standard of what our expectations are? And ideally, right, if someone's sort of trending in the trending in the wrong direction, sorry. And this is typically, I named the episode this way. I brought up the topic this way on purpose because the idea is that you have someone who you really thought was going to be good and was probably at least a decent performer initially with you, or you had a decent expectation of their potential with you and your company. So you're really trying to make it work out. And for us, it's the same process. We're going to have a little bit more of an informal conversation first, depending on how egregious the thing is. And we're trying to do this as early in the process as we catch the thing as possible, right? The effectiveness of feedback, I would argue, decreases the farther away it is from the thing that happened. So, it's I make the joke about, dog shitting in the house all the time. So if a dog shits in the house, you're at work all day, and the dog shits in the house in the morning or whatever, and you come back and then you're mad at the dog doesn't know what the fuck it did wrong, right? The dog doesn't understand that. So you've got to get the feedback closer to the thing, right? Closer to the action that happened. It's going to be more effective that way. But we have an informal conversation. We will typically, like the way I like to framework this, I don't know if I've done an episode with you guys or not on it, but we call it the crucial conversation method. It's kind of stolen and a bastardized version of a thing we got from a book. And so, like tactically, what we do to try to make that
From a
conversation
book.
more um, more useful, right? Maybe a more effective coaching conversation is thing one with this crucial conversation stuff is you're gonna state the common ground, right? You're gonna try to find common ground and open the ear of the person on the other side. So that might look like, you know, hey Connor, like we can both agree that we want you to have a great career here and da 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 and change a bunch of lives and make a bunch of money. Like we can both agree to that, can't we? Connor's gonna be like, well, yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. On to step two, which is state the facts, right? Which might be, so the standard for this is this, and you were late on Thursday, the 28th, and Tuesday, the whatever, blah, blah, blah. What I like to do after I've stated the facts, that's not like emotions, and we're not getting into this really pissed me off, blah, blah, blah. You're getting into the clear standards that have been violated in whatever the position or role is. This is why I say it's a bastardized version, it's not the same thing from the book. I like to then open the door in most cases because I believe that we have a limited number of like you've only got so many negative conversations that you can have with a given individual, particularly in a row, before they're like, fuck this, fuck you, I'm out. Right. And so if I can not have to play the asshole card and let them be the asshole to themselves, that is a way more positive thing than me just being like, this is not the standard. You need to get this done or you're fucking out. Dick, like whatever. And so I like to open the door. So these are the facts. What do you think we should do in this situation? That's opening the door. And hopefully they give you some feedback that is acceptable to you based on the situation. So if they say, no, you know what? Like, I know being late is unacceptable. I've gotten a secondary alarm. I got it from Amazon. I got it on my phone on this. Like, I'm not going to be late again. Like, totally understand, what have you. Hopefully, they're a bigger dick to themselves than I would be to them. And that's a very positive, situation for us. If we open the door and they do not give an acceptable response that is acceptable to you as the business owner, then you can state your wants, which might be, XYZ. Again, it's going to vary depending on the situation. And so it's not quite like it's not a documented performance improvement plan, but it is a conversation that gets very clear on what the standards are. And ideally, in the best of situations, lets you keep one of those like asshole cards in your pocket so you can play it later, right? You can keep that kind of close to the chest. If it continues, then we go into a documented performance improvement plan. And I think like Mark said, right, we want it written out. We want it to be very clear. My process for it is I'm going to have each of the standards, right? Each of the expectations of a given role written out. And I'm going to go through each thing line by line and say, okay, is this clear? Right? Like, what is unclear about this standard? Nothing. It's super clear. Okay, we feel like we can execute on this. Yes, absolutely. Like, what do you need from me to support you on this? Nothing. I just need to do it. Cool. Because if we don't hit said standard, right, within the next 90 days, like your business relationship with us is no longer going to be a thing, right? We're going to have to part ways. And so that's kind of our framework for a performance improvement plan. What did I miss? What would you guys like to add to that
I think,
process?
gym owners talk about extreme ownership a lot, right? Which I think is a very valuable thing to do. But I think too much of the time it becomes, how do you practice extreme ownership with a little bit of grace for yourself and or a team member who may be in a leadership position? And I've talked with my leadership on this as well, because we're always trying to improve, right? Complacency kills. So if something goes wrong and the personnel front, which it will, the filter I like to use is like, where is it going wrong? Well, I just didn't manage them well. I didn't lead them well. And they use those interchangeably, which I don't like, because leadership is more about, in my definition for this, is more about setting the vision, setting the path, what the purpose of the role is and all that kind of stuff, right? And how it fits. The management is the responsibilities line by line. This is what we expect out of you. Is it being done? Yes or no? The dialing it in from a week to week basis, right? So you could say it was a poor leadership, was a poor management. And if both those things, like actually the leadership was good, actually the management was actually pretty good too. All right, well now it's just the poor person, because I think sometimes we don't say, hey, they told me this. We expect them to do this. They're not growing how they said they were going to. They're not growing at their pace. They're unclear. Something happened in their personal life and they don't have the emotional capacity to work through it, despite us trying to help them and guide it. Where do you draw the line of, hey, it's not me, it's you type of thing? but I think that's just a good important filter to draw from it. And that's not always as clear cut as it needs to be, is how I just described it. But it allows us to say, all right, why do you get better at this leadership piece of this? The management was good, but the leadership was faulty. Or it's like, hey, I painted a great picture off the beginning. I just didn't manage it well because XYZ. I got busy, or this detail changed, or this opportunity happened, or we dealt with this issue. So the management could have definitely been improved. It's not all on them. Or it's like, you know what, we dialed that in. We had these conversations. We were good on the management front. This person just isn't where it needs to be to meet the standard. Something has to happen, whether that's a role change, whether that's parting ways, whatever that is, something has to happen. So that's a good filter to use when we're talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a super great point. Like the we had a conversation with this in our quarterly, right, with GMM, and hashtag if you'd like to work with the best agency for small group personal training and personal training gym owners, gymmembermachine.com. But we had a quarterly meeting, and we were talking about some of this leadership stuff and kind of the progression for how we handle some of these conversations. And one of the things that came up that I thought was very smart is, if someone makes a mistake, cool, like we need to address the mistake. We also need to look at the system, right? We need to look at what could we have improved to make it easier to follow or to hit said standard. And again, whatever the thing is that you're trying to get the team member to do. I think it's a super smart thing you shared there, Mark. Good stuff. What else, boys? I've got another question for you. If you
Shoot.
So how often have you gotten to the point of performance improvement plan and then things worked out with that employee?
I just had one.
Nice. Sweet. Is that the first?
So you were thinking you were thinking the opposite, that it usually doesn't. I think most of the time they do not. I think most of the time it's wrong person, wrong seat situation. And it oftentimes leads to, when you actually put the performance improvement plan in place and you hold them to that standard, they realize like, oh shit, this is not what I thought I was getting into. And they exit the business. Or obviously the situation where, you have to make the decision of like, hey, we did everything that we possibly could on our end. It's not going to work out. But in this situation, it did work out. And I think it was just a realignment of, hey, this is the overall vision that we're going for. And we think you're a great fit. Here's where you really need to improve, and you really need to improve quickly. And it worked out.
That's awesome. Mark, what about you?
Two different perspectives on it. Yeah, two different perspectives on it is like earlier on, it worked out more because it helped us as a leadership or a business get more clear on it. So it was like, we're putting this person on improvement plan, and it really was just it was us that was the problem, or we were lacking.
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
if someone goes on it, it's usually it's the person thing, and that doesn't work out as nearly as often anymore because the checkpoints before we get there have been improved. I also think though too, there's another perspective of, it's not just always for disciplinary reasons. I think sometimes it can be used for, if presented the right way in your company, like this is just from a skill set that we want to improve on, right?
Mhm.
We don't necessarily have this right now, but we do this within our quarterly reviews of, this is the skill we're going to improve on. This is what success looks like. This is what we're going to do to get there, type of thing. And if I wanted to, I could break that out as a separate improvement plan for that specific area. We're talking more on a disciplinary issue, but it can also
Sure.
be from a positive developmental standpoint, especially with younger team members.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because the reality, like when we talk PIPs, right, performance improvement plans, that is typically in the context of someone is not meeting the standard, and they are basically at risk of leaving the business, and it's like, you're going to do this, you're going to be fired. Whereas, maybe to I hate to use like the same letters and whatever it is. Now I can't think of the thing. What's the deal? Acronym. Like PDP, personal development plan, right, might be a different thing in a different context that you can use really probably the same framework for, and just use it as coaching and developing your team in a more positive fashion. It's like, your job's not in danger, right? Like, here's where we need to improve things. Yeah, I mentioned the expectations of the performance improvement plan just in case, gym owners are like, I did this and the person fucking left immediately. Like, what the fuck, guys? Like, this didn't work. So, from my seat, I have now heard of 3, not count like however many Mark has had, but before Mark talked, I have now heard of 3 performance improvement plans that worked out, and I was one of them in a company that I worked in, that you guys, used to whatever. And so most of the time, I think what I would say, and I don't want you guys to disagree with me. If you disagree, obviously, what I would say is if you're putting somebody on a performance improvement plan, you're getting to that point of the journey with that team member is you probably need to have a plan to rehire and replace the role, whether it's someone already on your team or getting ready to hire to replace them externally, what have you. Like you probably need to be prepared for that because most of them don't work out. It can. And frankly, I would say that, you know, giving them this opportunity is the highest amount of grace that you could give this team member, right? Because you are resetting expectations and creating clarity on how they can be successful within your company. However, some people don't want to go through that. And a lot of times they will, like, I had a guy that literally just like quiet quit on it. He had missed like 2 things on the performance improvement plan one day and then just didn't log back in again. It's like, I'm gone. I know I'm not getting paid again. I was like, well, shit. Okay. I guess that worked out. Like, time to go higher. Um, but help me reel that in and make it a coherent thought or anything to add to it. What do we think?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to the strength of again, the strength of the culture from the get go, the strength of the values from the get go, and how strong is the management from there. Should not be having people on improvement plans constantly. I think we have 2 last year and a team of 30 people, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think they both worked out. One worked, I can't even remember. It's just it's a rarity, right? You have it in our system as needed, but the better we get at the management and really hiring the right people and reinforcing the standard that we want and the qualities that we want in our people, like this is a pretty much last resort. You can usually get it done what you need to get done with some better clarity, some better coaching conversations, just really better communication.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times misunderstandings or right unrealistic expectations or whatever it is, and just gotta have that talk. So I think it's a credit to the maturity of not only the leadership, but it's the maturity of the business and the systems you have in place before it gets to this level.
It's a good point. Good point. Set up people to succeed, and turns out they'll probably succeed at a higher rate. Connor, anything to add?
No, I really agree with Mark in terms of setting the expectation at our front end. And it's going to solve a lot of problems. And then, like he said, our performance improvement plans are few and far between,
Mhm.
and it's because now we do the quarterly stuff every single quarter because you do quarterly stuff every quarter, and the constant communication on coaching them up to improve those certain metrics. But performance improvement plans only come when things are completely out of whack. And so if you're having few conversations with your coaches and your employees and not a consistent basis and at a consistent cadence, then that stuff is going to come up because you're just letting it go and you're sweeping it under the rug and you're paying attention to someone else and you're not actually leading and managing the way that you should. Um, but if you're having those consistent conversations and helping them develop and helping them dial in what you want them to dial in, that stuff should not come up all the time
Yeah, probably the best way to avoid these team member issues would be to avoid waiting until they're giant issues to start to address them, right? Which is
and have a better hiring system.
have a better hiring system. I think about course correction, right? If you get off course, you take a wrong turn. I'm going to drive up to go see Mark in Michigan, right, all the way from Texas. If I take a wrong turn and go for a block and then get corrected, well, I'm not that far off course, right? I'm probably still going to end up in Michigan. But if I take a wrong turn and start going in the entire wrong direction and fucking Siri doesn't correct my ass until I'm in Florida or some shit, like it's probably pretty unlikely that I'm going to get to my destination in any reasonable period of time. So the more frequent that you can have these, the faster your feedback loops can be with your team, the faster you're going to improve things, the quicker you're going to catch things if they are going off track, and the less necessary any of these like bigger, deeper, hairier, like harder conversations hairy and hard. How about that? Like, the less often those things are going to happen.
I dig it.
I dig it. And with that, we'll close this out. Appreciate you guys. If you got value from the episode, please share it with a gym owner you think will love it. Leave a 5-star review, like and subscribe, and send us all your money. Love, hugs. See you next week.